All right, this is Joe Satriani, and you are listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and today I'll be talking to a genius of guitar, Mr. Joe Satriani. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction.
My pleasure. Hey, the last time we spoke, you had a golden guitar next to you. Is that still there? Like a fully
let's see, what's
golden.
here? I've got Strat.
Yeah.
I've got the Elephants of Mars that goes with your background. EVH guitar. Let's see what else. Got chrome, two chromes and a red. No, I think the gold guitar is back in the case.
Well, let's talk about your art exhibit. The first time we spoke was early in 2022, on the exact day that Sahara, the single from your latest album, was released. And you did an art exhibit then. So now there are 3 more events to show your paintings, yeah?
Yes, my fingers are covered with paint right now, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, we decided to do 3 in a row at the Florida galleries, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I've been painting like crazy, guitars, lots of canvases. We're doing a whole bunch of pieces on paper as well, that are quite unique one-offs. And so I'm really excited. This, the variety, the big 40 by 40s, and then getting down to the smaller sizes, together with the guitars is just, it's really got my creative juices flowing, really overtime. It's great. It's mesmerizing a bit. I've had to get up really early because there've been house painters here, and they show up like at 7 in the morning. So my whole schedule is so different, just because usually, you're on the road, you wake up at 1 in the afternoon, and you work in the night, and you don't get to sleep till 4 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
And now I'm up at the crack of dawn. It's crazy. But
Well,
it adds to the creativity. It does. You come up with different ideas.
I bet. Yeah. Well, let me plug in the exact dates and times. So Friday, September 8th, 7 to 10 p.m. at Wentworth Gallery at Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. Saturday, September 9th, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Wentworth Gallery at Boca Raton Town Center Mall. Sunday, September 10th, from 1 to 4 p.m. at Wentworth Gallery at Las Olas. Is that correct?
Yes.
I hope it is. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, and the awesome thing about these exhibits is that anyone who purchases your work will be treated to a private performance inside the gallery after the exhibit, right?
Yeah, it's really been a really great little experience for all of us. It's very intimate. I mean, it's really interesting because the galleries aren't like a theater or an arena, something like that. So I'm playing in a way that I would do, let's say, at rehearsal. Same amount of people, it might be 20 will fit in the gallery. So it's really relaxed, casual. At the same time, the intimacy drives the intensity of delivering a performance to a very personal level. It's really interesting. And it's fun. I know this isn't going to make sense, but it reminds me of the early gigs that I used to do when I was a teenager, and I wanted to get experience, and I would play in schools, churches, any setting that would let me play my guitar, and they were usually really small. And I did find that it was interesting. Just like a comedian, you have to work in the room you're in. And every performance is going to be different because of the size of the room and the type of audience. And as a performer, you have to learn to make it work and rise above any issues that might throw you off guard. So but what I think is the coolest thing about doing the shows in the galleries is that I'm surrounded, as well as the audience, we're surrounded by my artwork. I mean, literally wall to wall is the craziest looking stuff. And I admit my artwork's a bit crazy,
Yeah.
very colorful, very intense, lots of aliens, guitars, planets. And there I am playing a guitar that's also got aliens and planets and all kinds of crazy colors on it. And so it's a freaky event. I mean,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
nothing like a concert, which seems
Yeah.
kind of normal compared to this. This is like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. And there's an extra treat. Like if you purchase one of the hand-painted guitars, whoever does that will have the extra thrill of jamming with you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I can't believe they're so brave. They come up, they've never played the guitar before, and they've never plugged into the amp that I provide them.
Yeah.
And in front of their family and their friends, they've got to suddenly be the best they can. But it's all for fun, and I never put anybody out. We always just play at whatever level they're at.
Okay. Okay.
Some of them wind up being total shredders, and the
Oh,
others just casually like to strum.
right.
So we make it work and we have fun.
Right. And is there going to be a band with you in these performances, or just you playing alone,
No, it's
or?
just me and my backing tracks.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. And I'm curious about how inspiration comes to you. I mean, do you find that the inspiration to write music and painting complement each other? Do they come at the same time, or they clash against each other?
Yeah, no, sometimes I will spend some time like looping some of my demos, and listening to them as I'm painting, and it gets me. It's an interesting perspective, because when you're a musician, you have your music is under the microscope, so to speak, and so you don't hear it like a normal person would. But if I'm out in my art studio and I have radio on, or I'm streaming something, I'm not really paying attention to the music like a musician. I'm just
Right.
trying to be a normal person. And every once in a while I go, oh, I love that track, and
Right.
it increases your mood, so to speak. And that's important, to be able to hear your music like a fan would hear it, and how
Yeah.
the effect that it has, not the technicality of it,
Yeah.
the figuring, all the things we think about as guitar players and musicians. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I do find, I have to say that I find that listening to other artists' music is more inspiring when I'm painting.
Right. Right.
And it kind of blows my mind what I'll listen to all day long. And it's because I go through these phases. And this past week, last week, I think I listened to Gojira maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred
Oh,
hours.
wow. Oh, wow.
I just got on this kick. I'd known about the band for many years, but I never really would, loop an album over and over again to get
Yeah.
really into it. And
Yeah.
but suddenly I was receptive. I don't know, because of what I was painting or something. Um, but I started with the most recent album, and then I started to go back and just did the typical deep dive that a
Okay.
fan would be. And it was great. I mean, I love the band. They're an amazing band, and they write really interesting music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think back, I had episodes where I'd listen to Black Sabbath for a week. That's it.
Right. Right.
Entire catalog. One of the cool things about the streaming platforms is that they make it easier to do a deep dive into somebody's whole catalog,
Right.
because you don't have
Yeah.
to stop and
Yeah.
out albums or change cassettes or CDs or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I kind of do that when I'm about to interview someone like you, for example, and I listen to the latest one, the Elephants of Mars, in a looping the last few days. Honestly, I mean, I love the curveballs of the album, like Sailing the Seas of Ganymede, Tension and Release. There's still a lot to unpack on that album alone, and I don't think it sounds like anything else in your career. I don't know if you agree or not, but
Oh, no, I agree. I
yeah,
set out to make the strangest, most, powerful and engaging album that I could, and I knew that it
yeah,
would just like really stretching the stylistic boundaries. And because we had a generous schedule to record it, we were allowed to, look away from one song and just concentrate on a particular one for weeks if we had to.
Yeah.
And I think that that allows each song to be so different, and not only with performances, but how we eventually arranged it and produced it. When you're in the studio, for 10 days, let's say, and you've got a whole band there, you're going to get a lot of the same stuff because you have to. It's expensive to have everybody in one place. The studio's expensive. Everyone's staying in hotels. It's just everything's expensive. And so you get in there almost like the mindset of doing a set of shows, like a short tour, and you really try to be efficient, professional, bang things out. And what falls by the wayside is all the different ways that you could have done it, because you just don't have the time. So that's Elephants of Mars benefited from having this relaxed schedule, not because of because of something good. It was because we were all quarantined and separated by oceans and whatnot. So we had to figure out a way to do it, but we decided, well, this is if we're going to try to work something in our favor here, it's going to be the schedule. And so I was really happy, and I'm happy to hear you say that, because that was one of the things I really wanted to accomplish with the album.
And I'm in contact with Brian Beller through Facebook. I interviewed him a while ago to promote the Aristocrats, but he mentioned the tour went really well. Unfortunately, you played the show here in Toronto. I was on a business trip. I could not attend, but I heard it went really well, right? And are you still planning more dates for that album in particular, or not?
Actually, not for this year. We finished up the last few dates that we played. Actually, I couldn't get Brian on those last dates because he already had booked Aristocrats shows. But we did finish up the European tour at the beginning of June, and then I had 4 days. I was invited to play with Steve Miller. I wanted to do the show, so we added a few other dates, but my keyboard player and Brian weren't available. So it was a nice opportunity to get Mark Maggie on bass.
You got Derek Sherinian on keys.
Derek Sherinian, of course, which was really great. We'd been missing each other for, decades. So it was really great to spend some time with him. Amazing musician, like Mark Maggie. I mean, and they're both different, they come from different places than myself. So it was nice to have this stylistic nudge in a different way. I wish we had a couple of weeks to, to actually explore each other, but we had to do these shows. But so I'm pretty much off until we start up in January. There's all these things that are happening from January through the September, but I can't talk about it yet.
Okay, fair enough. When
I can, we'll talk about it.
Sure. And well, over the years, you were also a member of a few bands. Some lasted more than others, but Greg Kihn Band, Chickenfoot, Deep Purple. Is being part of a band something you still think about, or are you planning to do that eventually, or not?
I miss it. I mean, it's really, as a guitar player, instrumental guitar player, there's a pressure because in general, audiences gravitate towards bands with singers. So when an instrumentalist takes the stage, they know they have to work extra hard to connect with the audience. They don't have vocals, they don't have lyrics, and so the other thing is that being, so to speak, I am the vocalist in the band. I have to play melodies for every song. And so when I get a chance to play in a straight ahead band with a singer, it's really nice to sort of relax and step back.
Take a back seat. And
hang out with the drummer and the bass player. It's like, this is something I love doing. When I make albums, that's the first thing I do is I hang out with the band and I play rhythm. And I don't get to do that if I'm, the star of the show. So that's what I miss most. and those bands, great band, and they all had great lead singers. Ian
Yeah.
Gillan and Greg Kihn playing with Mick Jagger,
Yeah.
and of course Sammy Hagar, fantastic, extrovert lead vocalist, performers, great
Yeah.
entertainers, great communicators, all very different, in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
style.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to be able to provide the background for them.
Yeah.
It's an art form, being a really great rhythm player.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And well, Steve Morse left Deep Purple last year. Did you think for a second that they would gonna call you to be back in the band, or not really?
oh no, I didn't think of it. I knew that they have a really big circle of friends that play guitar that are great.
Okay.
So I just figured someone was already lined up, and then even if they called, I mean, I'm so involved in so many things right now. I
Yeah.
know how I would make that work.
Yeah.
Uh, it would be a lot of work because a lot of their show is the Steve Morse era, which is the largest era of Deep
Yeah.
Purple. You know,
Believe it or not. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's a lot of Steve Morse stuff that is really hard to play.
Yeah.
And it's different. Steve is a very unique player. It was easier for me when I was thinking of trying to play like Richie Blackmore. You can't really play, you
Yeah.
can't copy him, you can't replace him, but you can play kind of like him because he was a blues-based classic rock player, which is more like my style. And Steve is more progressive. And so for a second, I thought whoever takes Steve's place is going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And well, changing the subject a little bit, I have to thank you for the G3 tour that you put together, because the first one was in the mid 90s. It was a time, well, we're still living the hangover of grunge.
Yeah.
Let's just say that guitar solos were not the first priority in music at the time, right? But you managed to
Yes.
bring it back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting period because I was coming off of the eponymous release in 95,
Mm-hmm.
and the tour was really long, and we were playing some really amazing places. And I came back to the Bill Graham management office, and I said, thanks guys, everything's going great. However, this success is keeping me isolated. It's like I can never hang out with like Steve Vai because we're always in some other country, and all my other guitar playing friends. So I thought, I want to solve this. So I said, why don't we do our own festival? Which was a crazy idea, I
Yeah.
admit. Who's going to come to a all shredder guitar festival,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I didn't want to do one. I wanted to make it a tour, a
Mm-hmm.
traveling circus kind of idea. So we sat down for about 3 hours and we talked about every possible permutation of how it could work. And it was interesting because, you as an artist, you come up with crazy ideas, which is our job, it's just to think free. But out there in the real world, the promoter takes the financial risk to put any show on. So
Yeah.
my job is to try to sell the idea to the promoter, and then the promoter will take the risk and then set it up along with the agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had to go through that process of like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we had, Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen? And then we had to like, okay, let's calm down and let's back to reality.
Yeah.
Like, how much is it going to cost, and where could we possibly play, and how long a show is going to fit into the venues that we could play in? Because
Yeah.
you rent the venue every night, and there's a curfew, because people work there, and they show up at work and they got to go home, and so on and so forth. So the crazy dream started to go from a Lollapalooza idea all the way down to something very contained.
Right.
But what made it work for me was I thought, wow, if I can get, Steve Vai and Eric Johnson to join me on stage every night, for a couple of months, and every night I'm standing next to them, smiling, laughing, and we're just
Yeah.
trading solos. I said, that's what I want. That's what I always thought as a teenager, that if you were a rock star, you get to hang out with your buddies and play music all the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I liked about the idea is that it went against all the accepted rules of show business, which was, like never stand next to someone who might play better than you. Or,
I didn't know that was a rule, but yeah,
Oh, it
I'm
was
glad you
always,
challenged that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like they always talk about that. Like my
Okay.
artist is never going to play with your artist, that kind of thing.
Right.
And it actually goes back to like, 100 years ago. Performers used to think about that all the time, like, but there were vaudeville performers that refused to do acts with children or animals because they would always upstage
Yeah.
them as the adult. I think there was a famous W.C. Fields joke about that, and anyway, but in the modern era, it was, people, guitar players especially, they're very gunslinger like, and very protective of their tricks,
Yeah.
and they just didn't like the idea of doing that,
Yeah.
of not being the loudest, the fastest, the craziest, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my pitch to the guys was that the audience has already made up their mind who they like better, so you can just forget about that. You're
Yeah.
not going to change their mind by wearing, crazy shoes or playing louder or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like already decided. They're actually coming because they're happy that we've decided to let our guard down and just entertain them. So
Yeah.
once you get that through your mind, then it's really, the floodgates are open as far as the creativity goes. And after the first show I did with Steve and Eric, they got it. They totally got it. And they were worried that wasn't really going to happen. And I kept saying, it's going to happen. You'll see. We're standing next to each other. The love that we get from the audience is going to totally revolutionize your thought process about this.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I've seen some unusual permutations of that initial lineup, not necessarily with shredders like Robert Fripp, Phil Collen. I wonder who else you've invited that did not accept or the schedules did not align, if you can name a few.
Oh, well, some of them really want to do it, but they don't have a thing to do,
Okay.
like Emmett, good friends with Kirk, and he loves the idea, but he, for back when I was calling him about it, he never had a solo album or band or anything. So it was like, he gets to do whatever he wants in Metallica. And that was kind of the same with a few artists that didn't really feel like they needed G3 to step out because their own gig is stepping out all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one of the ones that I regret that slipped through my fingers was we had Jeff Beck and Billy Gibbons all lined up, all agreed. And right at the last minute, Jeff Beck decided he wanted to do something else. And it just broke my heart because I was a super fan of Jeff and Billy. And I see, and talk to Billy all the time now. He's amazing genius and wonderful person. But that one, that both of us was like, it's too bad that didn't happen,
Yeah. I'm guessing you invited Eddie Van Halen as well, but I mean, he was happy with Van Halen, I guess.
That's a perfect example. I'm glad you brought that up. Eddie didn't need G3 because he had his own band.
Yeah.
So he could play whatever he want and anytime he wanted to. So, but I did actually reach out. I didn't know him well enough where I could pick up the phone and talk to him personally. So I always had to send messages through proper channels. And I did over and over again.
Yeah.
Never really expecting a reply other than the very courteous, no, thank you. Which was great. But that would have been crazy, right?
Oh my God.
And we always try to let artists know, like, that aren't used to it, that they can make it happen. Let me tell you, this is a good story. John Petrucci, we asked John to do it, and John said, well, I don't have a solo album, or I don't have a solo band. And we were like, well, you could make one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he took the challenge, and he went and he immediately wrote a solo album, recorded.
Oh, wow.
And he was ready. And it was like, that's exactly, what we were looking for, is a guitar player who's motivated to really stretch.
And
to grow into it. And it's been great that way, because I think John's played on almost as many as Steve Vai has. They're the two that have done the most.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw that meme of you guys playing together, and he has like the is not X-ray, but like a laser vision on your guitar. Yeah.
Yes. You know, the thing that's so that people don't know about is like when we finish playing every night, we walk off stage, and before we even get to, you know, backstage, one of us inevitably is going to say, how did you do that? When, you know, when you were doing that and you put your hand over there, show me how, and we talk about it right off stage. Like, we don't just disappear into our dressing rooms or tour buses. We sit there and we talk about what everybody just did, because we're making it up as we go along,
Yeah.
and trade secrets and ideas, and talk about the sound and fingering, and then
Yeah.
the following night you'll see the other guy trying that thing that you talked about. So
Right.
it's really great to have that. That goes back to my, you know, my original desire for G3, was that I wanted that exchange between my comrades, you know, and
Yeah.
my guitar playing friends,
Yeah.
rather than keeping it all, you know, locked up, you know, all
Yeah.
your secrets, you know.
Yeah. Well, let me follow up on a question I asked you, I think January, February last year. It's about a potential album with vocals with Glenn Hughes, because I spoke with
Oh,
Glenn two
yeah.
weeks ago, and you kind of said that it kind of fizzled out, but Glenn said he would be game for it. So maybe
Oh,
now.
wow.
Yeah.
I really thought that we, you know, after doing What Happens Next, that there was a really good connection, and we were planning on putting a special band together for a G3 that he would be in, and then um, you know, because amazing bass player, amazing vocalist,
Yeah.
entertainer,
Yeah.
and just would have been a very different kind of G3 than we've ever done before. Have me
Yeah.
traveling with a bass player who sings, you know, it would change the kind of songs that we could do. And we did talk about doing a vocal album, and but he was already releasing albums with other artists at the time.
Okay. Dead
And
Daisies,
so
I'm
I thought,
assuming. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be tough to, you know, in between Black Country Communion and Dead Daisies and his solo albums,
Yeah.
you know, it's like
Yeah.
what's left. And
Yeah.
then out of nowhere, he decided he didn't really want to do G3, and that kind of threw everything upside down
Off. Yeah.
for about 2 months, because we were just about to go to press and
Oh,
selling
okay.
tickets, and we had
Okay.
to like it was a bit traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Fair
I thought,
enough.
okay, now's not the right time, and but yeah, it turned out great, I think, for Glenn. He actually joined us on, I think he played with us in LA and in New Jersey on that G3 tour. He came out and sang Highway Star, I
Yeah, I
think.
saw that. Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Uh, and you know, what a superstar, you know.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah.
uh, so yeah, I kept thinking like, oh, one of these days, but you know, once again, I just saw that he was together with Derek and Joe and Jason doing another Black Country Communion album. So, you know, you don't want to overwhelm the audience with, you know,
Yeah.
albums of the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think if it's going to happen, we'll have to come up with something quite unique.
Yeah.
And it'll
Yeah.
have to make sense with these other great bands that he's in, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have this crazy idea of you doing an album with vocalists, but like writing a different song with a different singer on every song.
Oh yeah.
In my
Yeah.
book, that would be really cool. I don't know who would you pick? Maybe Sammy or Glenn or other guys you worked with before. That could be
Yes,
cool.
I know it's come up a lot. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Carlos Santana probably pioneered that idea
Oh yeah. Yeah.
of, you know, not having one singer,
Yeah.
and I've always, you know, the thing that always comes across my mind is, what am I going to do on tour?
Yeah.
When I go out
Yeah.
on tour, and if the record is popular, people want to hear the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 vocalists that are on there, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't got that guy. I don't have
Yeah. Yeah.
to come out and travel with us, you know. So I always saw it as a bit of a difficulty, and I thought, why not just join a band, you know?
Yeah.
So when Chickenfoot came around, I thought, oh, this makes more sense. You're in another band, every song's a vocal song. You've got a vocalist
Yeah.
that's a, you know, a complete communicator, superstar. And so that always felt better. And maybe that's because those are the bands I grew up playing with. And we mentioned before, Grey Ken, Deep Purple, Mick Jagger's.
Yeah.
That seems more natural to me,
Yeah.
than me trying to invite all these other singers in. And I don't know where that goes, because you can't,
Yeah.
if you take it on tour, especially today, I don't see how that helps.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, last question for me is about the series of comic books, Crystal Planet. You did a few of them. I think the last one was 2021. Are you planning to do more or not?
We hope so. I'm
Okay.
not really sure what's happening over there with Incendium and
Mhm.
Opus, and Lexi. It's one of those things that in the last 6 months,
Yeah.
the communication is somehow broken down. Ned Evatt and I are the creators and the writers, of Crystal Planet, and we are always taking meetings with Hollywood,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
trying to get this thing off the ground as either an animation type series, or a movie or something like that. So yeah, Ned and I have written the story in many different forms, as a novel, as a series, as a comic book, for TV, so to speak, and for streaming, and which is common when you're writers of a particular story, like a big story, like Crystal Planet. So you
Yeah.
develop it for different types of media to see which one is going to either work best or hit first. So we're still working that. It's a tough
Okay.
business getting financing to get these films or TV shows made, but we're making progress. And the having the Opus put out the comic books has been really great, because it's given life to the story while we've been shopping, the movie
Mhm.
idea. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fair enough. Whatever happens musically, comic book wise, tour, exhibit, we'll be here to promote it. But thanks for the interview. Thank you for your time. All right. And
always great to talk to you. Thank you.
likewise, man. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.